One of my all-time favourite sports cars is the Jaguar XJR-9. This V12 powered Group C monster helped knock Porsche off their perch in the World Sports Car Championship, in a period where TWR would go on to win it 3 times. As well as Le Mans, they also won the 24 Hours of Daytona across the pond in America, using this Castrol liveried car here. This is a scale replica built to commemorate that success in 1988. That's what I'm going to be working on today. If you go to the British Motor Museum and look at the Jaguar collection, they've got this fantastic set of quarter-scale replicas of many of the Jaguar prototype cars from the late 80s and early 90s. So, let's get to it, building this, the 1988 Daytona 24-hour winner, the XJR-9. Firstly, I'm starting with the Heller 143rd kit. If you want to see what's inside this, check out the link above. Now, I decided to cut into the car to create the NACA vents that go over the wheel covers at the back. Incidentally, if you did want to turn this into an older spec version of the car, like the XJR-8, you could probably cut these off completely to expose the rear wheels. After scoring the pattern, I then started creating the hole using this micro drill, and then used the craft blade to try and cut these shapes out. Had to be very careful to do this, and then used a few different files to smooth down the edges as best as possible. As with any work cutting out the part of the model, be very careful with your fingers and also the model. You don't want to accidentally cut in the wrong place. You can see the open wheel covers here on the real car, and that's what I'm going to try and replicate by scoring down the edge. Just doing this lightly, and you will see it underneath the decals, so it will be beneficial in the end. Then open the vents. I first scored these with a craft blade, and then I'm very carefully using these Tamiya side cutters to open them up. It's also worth then using a sharp pointed file just to smooth out the edges. Now firstly, I'm priming this in Tamiya light grey. Considering it's a white car, you might think, why am I priming it in light grey? But it's good because it means that you can then see a good coverage of white paint. And I'm then painting this in Tamiya LP2 gloss white. This has been thinned about 50% with Tamiya lacquer thinner, and I'm using my Galeri Swallowtail. If you want to find out more about that airbrush, have a look here, and you'll also be able to find a referral link with a discount code. So here it is once that's all painted. Nice finish. Now, I bought these replacement decals on eBay, but what I found in the past is that 1/43rd decals aren't always the same, so it's a good idea to photocopy them and to check them against the bodywork like so, to make sure that you're happy with the size and positioning. So here, these ones that go onto the back were attached, but I found that they didn't line up, so I cut them in half. And this one around the front for the lights, it's not big enough, so I'm going to have to cut this into sections and add a bit of green some other way. Incidentally, the reason that this car is Castrol sponsored rather than Silk Cut is that IMSA was sponsored by Camel, and they had a ban on other tobacco companies advertising their products. So the Jaguar team was sponsored by Castrol instead. These decals are pretty nice. I bought these from a company in Portugal. Now you can see here where they go over the flaps and things like that. So as well as using a little bit of strong decal solution from UMP, I'm also going to use a craft blade to cut out some of those edges. Now this one on the rear does sit over the tail lights quite well. Now the one at the front here is a good shape, but it's important to cut that little slit just in front of the 60 to make sure that it goes around the bodywork. Now obviously the long red lines here don't sit in exactly the right position straight away, so it's important to very carefully move those whilst the decal is still wet. then just rolling it out with a wet cotton bud to flatten them as best as possible. Now before that decal has set, I'm using a sharp craft blade to cut into those vents over the rear wheel cover. Once I've cut them out, I'll then put some strong decal solution and sort of try and fold them over so that they go into the vent. Now this one here is made up of two parts, but I didn't quite like the positioning, so it's a good idea to cut ones like this so the Jaguar is separate. I moved this one around a little bit until I was happy with the positioning of it. Looks to me like the green is supposed to curve around the vent just in front of the rear wheels. So I repositioned it. There we are. Then the little Jaguar can go above that wherever you please. Incidentally, the little vents above that I probably should have removed as they weren't on this car, but it was too late when I realised. These two are joined by a little bit of carrier film, so you may want to cut them in half if you find that easier. I decided to get the positioning right, I'd keep them together. Now the names of the drivers are actually attached to the window decals here, so I decided to cut them off. These are small, but the names and the flags of Brundle, Nielsen and Boesel are very well picked out. So as I said, this one at the front is the wrong size, so I'm practicing here with some photocopy again, and then I've chosen to cut it into 3 sections, and also cut down the middle of the red Castrol at the top to fit into the vent. Now this is the right width, so it's interesting. I wonder what the car was that these decals were actually made for. So I'm going to use a little bit of extra green. There's more green decal on the rear wing that you can see here, and I'm going to use that to patch up some of the gaps. I found that I didn't have an exact paint colour match for this green anywhere, so this made more sense. As you can see here, as it goes around the lights, it doesn't fit perfectly, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to meter up to the wheel arch like that. Then once those decals had set for a couple of days, I gave them 3 coats of Tamiya LP9 clear gloss lacquer paint. I started off with 2 mist coats before finishing off with a heavier coat. I have quite a few reference photos of the real car, such as this one here taken inside the cockpit, and so when I was painting this I used a mixture of semi-gloss black for the carbon fibre, matte black for the seat, and satin blue for the seat belts and other details. Then I went over the buckles with a bit of silver metallic, using a very fine brush and mainly Revell acrylics for these details. Ordinarily I wouldn't be a fan of moulded in seat belts, but in a car this small I think it makes a lot of sense. So there we have it. There's some small black bands which go on this box at the top, but I'm pretty happy with that. Now the wheels had a little bit of residue on them, the tyres I should say, so I wiped those off, and then the wheels are just black, and then they go onto little metal axles. The shorter of the 2 axles goes in the back because the tyres are larger. It's a good idea to push one through and then put the other one on the other end and put them on the table like that to force them together. If these aren't in far enough, then they will rub on the inside of the bodywork at the back, so you need to make sure the rear ones are assembled correctly. Front ones are just narrower, but go together just the same. You've only got tyre decals for the front decals on this one, and I'm actually choosing to leave them off. The Dunlop tyre decals on the real car were white, and I only have yellow ones, so I decided rather than it look weird, I'm just going to leave them. Now the rear wing is one piece, end plates and all, but as you can see here the real car had larger end plates. So what I'm going to do is use the craft blade, pushed right up against the end to gently slice those end plates off. Then once they were removed, I used some sanding sticks to sand the ends flat as best as possible. Then I checked the decal, which was a little bit too wide, so I trimmed that on both sides, and I painted the underside of the rear wing in gloss bright red from Tamiya. Put that decal down onto the top, making sure to get the thicker end at the front and the thinner end at the back. Now for the end plates themselves, what I did was I printed off a picture of the real car, scaled down the end plates correctly, and then I cut those new ones out of some sheet styrene. So you can see now they're the right size. Used a tiny amount of extra thin cement once the decals had set, and there you are, new end plates, much more like the real ones. Now I'm putting some anthracite grey onto the dashboard here. Need this to be very, very neat around the Castrol decal above it. And I painted a bit on the inside as well, using semi-gloss black. There's a small little circle here which needs to be black. And there's also these vents that go above the wheel arches. Now I should really have done this earlier, but what I did was I printed off some of my own decals with these little horizontal lines and positioned them above the wheel arches. Now yeah, I should have done it earlier because then they would have been protected by the clear gloss, but never mind, better late than never. And it's details like this which hopefully set this one apart from the Le Mans version of the car. So there's the interior all done again. Little bit of thin cement and just push that into place. Now this rear section here needs to go into the upper part of the bodywork, not the lower part, and then you've got the steering wheel also painted in black. Fits like so. Not much detail on the interior. Then you've got these rear wing supports. These are painted semi-gloss black and a little bit of red detail around the openings. And once those were securely in place using a bit of super glue this time, I fitted the wing above that. Need to make this really, really careful to make sure that both of the wing supports are in the right position. There we have it, just give that a little slight adjust. Now there's no headlight decals for this, so instead I'm using this chrome tape which was from an Aoshima kit. I've got this great little hole punch here, and this is a 4mm opening which I'm using for the larger headlights, and a 3.5mm opening for the smaller ones. Pushing those down just to make sure that they are nice and firm. And to make them look a little bit more like headlights, what I then did was use the hole punch again and cut out a little bit of a clear plastic bag. This is the kind of bag which you might get decals in or something like that. And then I put those circles on top of the chrome ones, just using a little bit of white PVA glue to bring the shine down a little bit. Now made sure to sand the headlight coverings around the edge to make sure that they fit nicely, because there was a little bit of flash on this kit. And then these were left unpainted around the edge, although they did come with some decals for the edges of these headlight covers, but they were the wrong size. So here's the other one. Again, sand it to make it smooth. And then a little bit of white glue to fit that into place. And there's the chassis, and here's the body. All good. I put a little bit of super glue onto the insides of the car, just so that this all sticks together nicely. Gave it a few test fits first to make sure I was happy. And then I've used this chrome silver Posca paint pen to add a few details, such as the fuel caps on either side, and a few little screws. Now the window, again, was sanded into place. Here's a little test fit. I gave it a bit of a rubber trim by using this Sharpie, and also picked out the moulded windscreen wiper on the front. And then again I used some white glue to fit that into place. Need to be very careful with this. Once I was happy, I then looked at the window masks. The ones in the aftermarket decals weren't the right size, so I used the ones from the original kit. Now, unlike when I did this before, I put these decals on the outside. I think that does look better, if I'm honest. Then used a bit of micro set to help it adhere and soften into place. Make sure you're happy with the position of the window before doing this, because it will smooth into the edges. There we are. Then I found the Jaguar one for the front window was too big. Actually, the window was too big, the mask was too small. So I just cut out the sun strip, and that one fit quite nicely. So just put that over the top. And it's good to do it in this order because it goes over the window masks ever so slightly. And yeah, looks good. Because I did a little bit of black trim around the window already, I don't think you're missing out on anything by not getting the lower half. Then finishing off firstly with a little bit of black panel line accent to pick out some of the vents. I also did the openings to the doors, and then you've got the wing mirrors painted in white with a little bit of silver for the reflective side. Just used a small amount of super glue to fit these into the holes. And there we have it. It's finished. I know I said in the original video that I wasn't going to rush out and get another one, but I really wanted to do one of these Castrol liveried cars, and finding the 24th scale Hasegawa version has proved a little difficult. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a kind of display where I can put both this one and the LM version together. Let me know what you think. Personally, I think that I've done a better job with this than I did with the original version. I think that the Hella decals weren't as good as these ones. If I was to do that one again, I probably would have tried to find some replacements. So let me know what you think. And as always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you soon.